Treehouses are often seen as places of joy, adventure, and childhood memories. They're sanctuaries nestled in the arms of nature, where imagination runs wild. But for one family, their backyard treehouse became the setting for a horrifying experience that would haunt them forever. This is the true story of the shadow in the treehouse. In the summer of 2015, the Johnson family moved to a quiet rural town in Oregon. Their new home came with a sprawling backyard, complete with a towering oak tree that seemed perfect for a treehouse. For their two children, 10-year-old Emily and 8-year-old Jake, it was a dream come true. Their father, Mark, spent weeks building the treehouse, crafting it with love and care. It had a small wooden ladder, a trapdoor, and even a tiny window overlooking the forest behind their property. The kids were thrilled. They spent hours playing in the treehouse, pretending it was a pirate ship, a castle, or a secret hideout. But as the weeks went by, Emily began to notice something strange. It started with small, almost unnoticeable things. Emily would leave her favorite book in the treehouse, only to find it moved to a different spot the next day. Jake's toy soldiers, which he carefully arranged in a line, would be scattered when they returned. At first, they thought it was each other playing pranks. But when they confronted one another, both swore they hadn't touched the items. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily climbed up to the treehouse alone. She wanted to retrieve her flashlight before it got too dark. As she reached the top of the ladder and pushed open the trapdoor, she froze. In the dim light, she thought she saw a shadow move across the wall. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. She called out, "Jake, is that you?" But there was no response. Gathering her courage, she stepped inside. The treehouse was empty. Over the next few weeks, the strange occurrences escalated. Both Emily and Jake began hearing faint whispers when they were in the treehouse. The voices were soft, almost like the rustling of leaves, but distinct enough to make the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. They couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unsettling, neither friendly nor hostile, just there. One night, Jake woke up screaming. He told his parents he had a nightmare about the treehouse. In his dream, a dark figure with glowing eyes was staring at him through the window. Mark and his wife, Sarah, dismissed it as a bad dream. But Jake refused to go back to the treehouse after that. Emily, however, was more curious than afraid. She decided to investigate. One afternoon, while her parents were busy inside the house, Emily climbed up to the treehouse with a notebook and a flashlight. She wanted to document anything unusual. As she sat quietly, she noticed something strange about the shadows on the walls. They didn't seem to match the movement of the branches outside. It was as if they had a life of their own. Suddenly, she heard the whispering again. This time, it was louder, more distinct. She could almost make out the words, "Leave. Not safe, leave." Her heart pounded as she shone her flashlight around the room. That's when she saw it. A dark, humanoid figure crouched in the corner. Its form was blurry, like smoke, but its eyes glowed faintly in the beam of her flashlight. Emily screamed and scrambled down the ladder, nearly falling in her haste. She ran into the house, tears streaming down her face, and told her parents what she had seen. Mark, skeptical but concerned, decided to check it out for himself. Armed with a flashlight and a baseball bat, Mark climbed up to the treehouse. He found nothing unusual at first, but as he turned to leave, he felt an icy chill run down his spine. The air seemed heavier, and the faint sound of whispering reached his ears. He spun around, shining his flashlight into the corners of the treehouse, but saw nothing. Just as he was about to dismiss it as his imagination, he noticed something carved into the wooden floorboards. It was a series of strange symbols, almost like runes, that he hadn't seen before. They were faint, as if someone had scratched them into the wood long ago. Mark decided to do some research. He took photos of the carvings and showed them to a local historian, who revealed something chilling. The land their house was built on had a dark history. Decades ago, it had been the site of a small settlement that was abandoned after a series of mysterious deaths. Some locals believed the area was cursed. Determined to protect his family, Mark decided to dismantle the treehouse. But before he could, the shadow made one final appearance. Late one night, as the family slept, they were awakened by a loud crash. Rushing outside, they saw the treehouse engulfed in flames. The fire department arrived quickly and managed to put out the blaze, but the treehouse was completely destroyed. The cause of the fire was never determined. There were no electrical wires or flammable materials in the treehouse, and the family hadn't used it in weeks. Some believed it was a freak accident, while others thought it was something more sinister. After the fire, the strange occurrences stopped. The Johnson family eventually moved away, but the memory of the shadow in the treehouse stayed with them. Emily, now an adult, still has nightmares about the glowing eyes and the whispering voice. She often wonders what would have happened if she hadn't run that day, if she had stayed to confront the shadow. The treehouse, once a symbol of childhood joy, became a haunting reminder of the unknown. To this day, the Johnsons avoid talking about it, but the story lives on as a chilling tale of what can happen when the past refuses to stay buried. Forests have always been places of mystery and wonder. Their towering trees and endless shadows can feel both enchanting and unsettling. But for one family, the forest behind their home became a source of terror, a place where the whispers of the trees carried secrets they were never meant to hear. This is the chilling true story of the Whispering Branches. In the fall of 2018, the Carter family moved to a small, secluded house in the Appalachian Mountains. The house was surrounded by dense forest, with towering trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky. For the Carters, it was a dream come true. They had always wanted to escape the noise of the city and live closer to nature. The family consisted of Sarah and David Carter, and their 12-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was especially excited about the move. She loved exploring the outdoors and couldn't wait to spend her afternoons wandering through the woods. The forest felt magical to her, like something out of a fairy tale. But from the very first day, Sarah felt uneasy. The trees seemed too close to the house, their branches almost brushing against the windows. At night, when the wind blew, the sound of the branches scraping against the walls sounded eerily like whispers. David dismissed her concerns, chalking it up to the stress of moving. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't long before Lily began spending hours in the forest. She would come home with stories about strange things she had seen, trees with twisted trunks that looked like faces, or branches that seemed to move even when there was no wind. Sarah and David laughed it off, thinking it was just Lily's imagination. But then, one evening, Lily came home looking pale and shaken. She told her parents that she had heard whispers in the forest. At first, she thought it was the wind, but the whispers sounded like voices, soft, indistinct, and coming from all around her. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, almost pleading. David tried to reassure her. "It's just the wind playing tricks on you," he said. But Sarah wasn't so sure. She had heard the whispers too, late at night when the house was quiet. They seemed to come from the trees outside their bedroom window, faint but persistent. A few days later, Lily came home with a new story. She had found a tree deep in the forest that was unlike any she had ever seen. Its trunk was massive, with a hollow at its base that was large enough for her to crawl inside. The tree's branches were gnarled and twisted, and its bark was covered in strange, spiraling patterns. Lily said that when she stood near the tree, the whispers grew louder. She felt as though the tree was watching her, its hollow like a dark, unblinking eye. Sarah told her to stay away from it, but Lily was fascinated. She began visiting the tree every day, sitting by its roots and listening to the whispers. One night, Sarah woke up to the sound of Lily's voice. She was standing by her bedroom window, staring out at the forest. "They're calling me," Lily said, her voice distant and dreamlike. "They want me to come back." Sarah and David were growing increasingly worried. Lily was becoming more withdrawn, spending all her time in the forest and barely speaking to them. She started drawing strange pictures, trees with faces, branches that looked like hands, and dark, shadowy figures standing among the trunks. Desperate for answers, Sarah decided to visit the tree herself. She followed Lily's path deep into the forest until she found it. The tree was even more unsettling than Lily had described. Its hollow seemed impossibly dark, and the spiraling patterns on its bark looked almost like runes. As Sarah stood there, she heard the whispers. They were louder than ever, and this time she could make out words. "Help us. Trapped, beware. Sarah felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. She turned and ran back to the house, her heart pounding. That night, she told David what she had experienced. He finally agreed that something strange was happening and decided to investigate further. David began researching the history of the area. He discovered that the forest had once been home to a small settlement in the 1800s. According to local legends, the settlers had mysteriously disappeared, leaving their homes abandoned. Some said they had been cursed by the land, while others believed they had been taken by the forest itself. One story in particular stood out. It spoke of a tree that the settlers had called the Whispering Tree. They believed it was cursed, a gateway to another world. The settlers had tried to cut it down, but every time they struck it with an axe, the tree seemed to heal itself. Eventually, they gave up and abandoned the area. David realized that the tree Lily had found matched the description of the Whispering Tree. He was terrified. He and Sarah decided that they needed to keep Lily away from the forest, but it was already too late. One night, Sarah woke up to find Lily's bed empty. The window was open, and a cold breeze was blowing into the room. Panicked, she and David ran into the forest, calling Lily's name. The whispers were louder than ever, surrounding them like a chorus of voices. They found Lily standing by the Whispering Tree, her hand resting on its trunk. She was staring into the hollow, her eyes wide and unblinking. "They're trapped," she said. "They need my help." Before Sarah or David could stop her, Lily stepped into the hollow and disappeared. The whispers stopped abruptly, leaving the forest in an eerie silence. Sarah and David searched the tree, but there was no sign of Lily. It was as though she had vanished into thin air. The Carters were devastated. They contacted the police, but no trace of Lily was ever found. The forest was searched extensively, but it was as though she had simply ceased to exist. Sarah and David eventually moved away, unable to bear living so close to the place where they had lost their daughter. To this day, the forest remains untouched. Locals avoid it, saying that it's cursed. Some claim to have heard whispers coming from the trees, while others say they've seen a young girl wandering among the trunks, her face pale and her eyes empty. The Whispering Tree still stands, its hollow as dark and foreboding as ever. And if you stand close enough, you might hear the whispers too, soft, urgent voices, calling out for help.